Welcome back to What's Your Mount Rushmore? This is the podcast where we talk about our 4 favorite things in a wide variety of topics. We've got a great one for you in this episode, actually. Really excited about it. My name is John Hansen.
And I'm Mark Duvel. On this one, this is a brutal one. This is an exciting one. It was a hard one because, again, we're covering a topic that is so hard to narrow down to 4. And here I sit, we're talking, we're beginning our podcast right now, and I still am second guessing who I put on my Mount Rushmore. So the mystery topic, it is stand-up comedians. This is brutal. I'm speaking for we and me and everyone in between. Stand-up comedy, if you're into it, you're into it. You watch, especially in the age of Netflix, where you can watch so many comedy specials, and then if you also have HBO, there's even more comedy specials.
Yeah.
And if you're someone who really kind of follows the art and the showmanship of being a stand-up comic, it is tough to narrow down to 4. So this is of all the topics that we've covered up to this point. This is one that we really encourage you to give feedback on, because we are going to have people off our lists that clearly belong on them. And that's where I would love to hear why other people choose what they choose. We know why we choose what we do, because ultimately it is. You have to come to a grip with who do I want to represent my 4 comedians up on the big mountain carved in stone.
Exactly.
So
it was very challenging, that's for sure.
It was. So without further ado, I'll get it rolling, and I'm going to come out of the gate with some thunder on just a titan of the industry when it comes to the art of being a stand-up comic, and that's the one and only Chris Rock. Now,
nice.
Chris Rock was like a breath of fresh air with a fresh take in the 90s. And I will never forget, and anyone who's seen it won't forget it. If you've seen Chris Rock bring the pain, you will be a fan of Chris Rock. It's just that simple. He was so damn funny and so cutting edge in how he talks and how he delivers his jokes and how he tells his stories. And he's become a damn legend. I don't think this is when people could be like, how the hell did he pick Chris Rock? He's one of those picks where I got to think, yeah, he might not be on your Mount Rushmore, but I will defend, if you're an anus who thinks he shouldn't be on a Mount Rushmore for comedy, then you're then you're ass backwards.
Will Smith just smacked the shit out of him.
I can't say enough about him. Obviously he's done a lot of things. He's an actor. He clearly, made his name on SNL and then launched into a huge stand-up comedy career. But I could not imagine a Mount Rushmore of stand-up comedians without having Chris Rock on it. And it's
we can't.
And it's not just from one special either. It's repeatedly. If he releases a special, it's good.
He's had a career of specials, and he's a funny. He's a funny actor. I mean, he's been funny in a lot of movies, and actually, I've seen Chris Rock in recent years, the last handful of years, do more than one serious role. He's actually a legitimate actor. Have you seen some of the things he's done?
For real, man.
Serious?
Going back to where it was kind of a tragic character and funny was New Jack City, going way back. That was before he even probably got his chops as an actor. He still played a good crackhead.
Somehow
he was very
got cast in that.
believable.
He was almost a nobody really when he got cast in that one. That was way back, and probably was just early days of SNL for him. But he's a great, and he's actually really impressed me with his dramatic acting. So he's a great pick. That's a great pick out of the gate.
Yeah, like I said, I'm coming out of the gate with a titan here, and he certainly is that. So that's how I start my list. How about you there?
Well, Chris Rock, he didn't make my list, but he was one of the ones that just missed the cut. So I'm glad to see that he made yours, because he definitely deserves to be talked about. My first pick, he's actually a guy who's, you and I are both Minnesota natives. This guy's a Minnesota native. He had a very short career. Unfortunately, he died young. It's Mitch Hedberg. Mitch Hedberg he had a very unique style. He had a unique way of talking. He had a unique delivery. His kind of shtick was one-liners. That's what he did. He had, sort of I won't say rapid fire because he had a very slow, deliberate delivery. Sometimes sounded like he might be on some drugs. I don't know. You never know. He had jokes about doing drugs, but I don't know if that was an act or part of his bit. But he was. But it was just the way he talked and delivered his lines.
Whenever I walk, people try to hand me out flyers, and when someone tries to hand me out a flyer, it's kind of like they're saying, "Here, you throw this away."
He unfortunately passed away too young, and he's been gone now for probably 15 years even. So he definitely would have had a brighter career had he been able to live longer. He just had these really funny one-liners. One of them that I remember stands out was he talks about having a paper route when he's a kid. He's like, when I was a kid, I had a paper route, and I learned that I was supposed to deliver papers to 2,000 houses or 2 dumpsters. Obviously not a good paper boy, but and then he'd move on to the next joke, and that's what he was, so
that's what you just said. I've not heard that joke from him, but I can't not acknowledge this, that my closest buddy, his name's Mike, and when we were younger, he was a paper boy, and we had those little 50cc scooters. And when it was time for, I don't know, Sunday or whatever it was when he had to deliver, we literally would just drive our scooters to a dumpster loaded with newspapers. No. And that's a very real thing.
Well, no, you just threw
2,000 homes or 2 dumpsters.
you just threw yourself and your friend Mike both under the bus right now, like just right there.
Yeah,
right in front of the whole world.
He'll own it too. No. Damn proud that we did that.
Yeah, so that's my number one.
I love the hometown pick. I like him. Not on my Mount Rushmore, but I get it. He was a great comedian, just too short of a career because of too short of a life. So that's the sad part of that one. I'll transition to probably a comedian that really is tied to zero type of controversy in that department as it relates to drugs or even controversial humor. My next pick is definitely representing kind of the clean-cut Midwest comedy scene and stand-up comedian, and that is who I believe in the last decade has grown even more than years ago when he first started, is Jim Gaffigan.
Great choice! Yeah,
our favorite pale comedian, and he loves to make fun of his appearance, how pale he is, and he's the one comedian where he's pretty clean. So there's not a lot of cursing, certainly not vulgar in any way, shape, or form. But somehow, man, this dude, he just deserves these props for making stand-up comedy so damn funny. And yet so much of what he jokes about is based around food.
It is.
It's so food-based.
It really is.
And it's so, I think that's why he's so amazing, because it's so relatable to every demographic.
Yeah.
You could be a 12-year-old watching Jim Gaffigan, or you could be an 80-year-old, and you'll both will be laughing equally hard because his comedy is so relatable. And God,
he's a big fan of Hot Pockets.
Because everyone used to run around Hot Pockets.
Yeah,
and but there's never been a routine where I guarantee you at least 60 to 70% of his act was about food,
or being pale,
or being out of shape.
Yes.
And again, he has that unique element in his stand-up show where he's talking like his subconscious when he always clicks into that higher pitched voice, like where he'll say something where he maybe didn't get the reaction, and then he'll go, "I don't think the crowd liked that one." It's no other comedian has really acknowledged the response or like another point of view from his joke. And
or
he's just he's the real deal.
Would say, is he going to keep doing these Hot Pockets jokes?
Yeah, he'll do like a ton of food jokes, and then go, "How many jokes about food does he have?"
Is he drunk? I think he's drunk.
He's my 2 spot, so we're getting there. We're punching our way through these names cutting through the thickness.
We are.
What do you got now for number?
Well, I'll go on to my number 2, and so I'll just to preface it, I get that Mitch Hedberg is not going to be on most people's Mount Rushmores. He's on mine. He made mine. This next comedian is another guy that might not be on a lot of people's Mount Rushmores, but the guy makes me laugh. It's Lewis Black.
An online encyclopedia that can be edited by any schmuck on the planet. If a monkey could get a hold of a computer, he could rewrite the theory of evolution.
The dude, again, sort of like Mitch Hedberg, he has a very unique delivery. And part of his appeal to me is his delivery. If you've ever seen Lewis Black, he seems like he's always pissed off. I mean,
love me some Lewis Black.
I'm sure it's probably an act when he gets on stage in front of a microphone, but he's just never happy. He's always angry at the world, and he's literally yelling at the world in his act. And it's a unique style because he's every joke is told the same way. He starts out telling something and he ends by yelling it. He just builds as he goes. The interesting thing about Lewis Black is he got a little bit later start in life. I think he was already in his mid 40s before he even started touring as a comic, and he was already 50 when he was 50 when he had his first Comedy Central special. And and I wasn't aware of this until I checked earlier today. I think he's 75 years old now, if you can believe that. He doesn't seem that old. But again, he started late in life, so that's
why he doesn't seem that old. I would have not guessed that about him.
Exactly, because he hasn't been around since he was in his 20s. He was already a middle-aged fella when he hit the big time. But I just love his style. I mean, he's the way he gestures on stage and he's kind of pointing his finger at things as he's yelling, and it's just he's one of those guys where he's funny to hear him, but it's even funnier to see him because you have to see his face when he's getting into these jokes. So,
I totally love the pick, and I do also love his delivery because he's the kind of comedian, and especially over the last several years where he's been kind of more politically charged. So I think the anger comes off even more. But he's the kind of guy where if his joke is a volume knob, when he starts his joke, it's like at 3. But by the time he's hitting his punchline, it's always like 11. Yes, he throughout the delivery of a joke to get to the punchline, it's almost like turning the volume up because he's getting angrier the closer you get to the punchline, and then he just hits you with it. And then that's when the gestures and the facial expressions come out. He's awesome, man. I love Lewis Black. And I love it too because he's not on mine, but man, he's certainly he was on the long list of, again, just guys you had to pull out of midair and just write down a list. And I'm like, I have way too many here. How is this going to work?
So it was tough.
That's a tough one. But now, I mean, this one, again, it's not that we necessarily, when we list our Mount Rushmore of people, that we're ranking them in any specific order. I will kind of be honest that I'm doing that in this episode. So like this next pick, my next 2 picks, these were comedians that when I put my list together, they were cemented on the list. They were never going to leave. It was always a debate of the other 2 spots. So my third pick is he's one of the monsters that really talk about stood the test of time, had a unique delivery, but more importantly, so many people look and speak about this guy like he really was a genius. And that's George Carlin.
Doesn't know when to stop talking, just continues running at the mouth like verbal diarrhea.
I think he was doing stand-up for around 50 years. Before at least 40, possibly 50. But he just came onto the scene, and he started kind of vulgar, because one of the big things that he used to be, kind of identified for was the 7 dirty words. And that was one of his bits that kind of started when he started doing like HBO or stand-up specials. But he just evolved to this guy that so much of his delivery and jokes, they were based in logic.
I have a question about this. A question that involves Logic!
He really wouldn't get all that political, a little bit, but it was always be very neutral. He would tear into politics, but just politics in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was
neither side was safe.
It was that. It was his vocabulary.
Yeah.
Great.
Smart
I mean,
guy.
he's just he wrote 3 books. I've read those. Every damn one of them is just the easiest read ever because page after page, it's just you're in the mind of George Carlin.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he clearly could write. He could clearly write a joke, and he had such a just a presence on stage because of how intelligent he came off.
Absolutely.
So yeah, George Carlin and another guy, man. I know he did live a full life, so he has passed away, but he just brought laughs, man, every time he did a special, up until his last one even.
Yes.
He's a damn genius, and that's why he belongs on my Mount Rushmore, and I have a feeling most people probably would consider him in that rarefied air on theirs too.
Yeah, that's a good safe bet for that, for sure. He's interesting too in the sense that he did start out very young as a comic. He probably didn't hit it big right away, but he was doing stand-up comedy as a young guy, college age or whatever.
Like 60s,
so I think
70s, 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the way, decade after decade. And he was in that era, those early... What was that?
Somebody stepped on a duck.
So makes me laugh.
And I'm regretting eating at a steakhouse before doing this podcast because there might be extra noises in the background. And for that, I apologize, but not really. So,
well, it is a podcast about comedy. So
flatulence.
Might as well add the lowbrow humor. Why not?
The low hanging fruit.
Literally.
I have a very low tolerance level for stupid bullshit.
So,
anyway,
George Carlin, thanks for the years of comedy, man.
The only reason that George Carlin is not on my Mount Rushmore list is because I was almost positive he'd be on yours, and I tried to switch things up. I tried to find some other people that maybe you wouldn't pick, so I left him off mine. He would probably be number 5 for me. My next pick, my number 3 pick here, is another guy who started out a little later in life as far as when he hit it big. It's Rodney Dangerfield.
Wow, Halloween, I open a front door, kids give me candy.
You won't find any pictures of Rodney Dangerfield on a stage when he was 25 years old, because he wasn't doing it. He did try comedy when he was young. He just didn't do very well. He failed.
Then he went into sales. Failed.
Yeah, he was selling like aluminum siding.
He was a siding guy. He's just like, because that's why I was kind of surprised when you were talking about Lewis Black. I've read Rodney's autobiography, and I didn't know that until I read that he didn't break through until he was around 50. Also, the same way.
Yeah.
But then he
exactly.
came on like a tidal wave, and he was one of those comics. I love your pick, man, because he's so close to being on my list. And again, I feel almost guilty that he's not. My dad was a huge fan of Rodney Dangerfield. It's a movie I've seen in the theater that my dad brought me to when I was younger, back to school. If you haven't seen it, please go back and dig it up. It's just cool, Rodney Dangerfield humor. But God, where I was going with that though was he made such a reputation for himself going on late night shows like Carson. Johnny would just let him go.
There was no interviews. He didn't. He when he was on Johnny, he was even on later on Letterman, and
Leno.
There was no interview.
No.
He sat down and he just kept doing his routine.
He just
goes. and the host just let him sit, and so he would do his routines. A couple minutes standing up, go and sit down. The routine just kept going. Except he was sitting.
And again, so much of the core of his joke writing was around the fact that I get no respect.
I tell you, I don't get no respect. No respect at all.
There's so many, so many great one-liners tied to the fact that he gets no respect.
Oh, probably the king of those one-liners, actually. Just rapid fire, and he actually, believe it or not, his big break was on the Ed Sullivan Show. That's how far back he goes.
Yeah.
That's when he actually finally had a big break. Because when he was younger, he wasn't having any success, and he didn't have that I get no respect character, basically, until he got a little bit older and figured out, wait a minute, I got to change things up. Once he created this version of Rodney Dangerfield, we all know, he was off like a rocket ship,
The persona that he created, and it just worked for his style of comedy. Absolutely.
It was perfect. And he had the look with the bug eyes. I mean, he fit the bill, you know,
just his voice, his attitude. Great pick, man. Another legend.
We could do a whole podcast just about Rodney. So,
easily. And you know what? The next pick on my list, it's my final pick. And again, I feel like we've been down this road before that you haven't said this person, I haven't said this person. Therefore, I'm going to go ahead and assume, because if you don't have this gentleman on your Mount Rushmore comedy, you are a penis. And I'm talking about the one and only legend, Eddie Murphy. Is he on yours? Let's just get that out of the way.
He is. He's my number 4.
Okay, he has to be, because we can't be sitting here judging comedians if we don't both have Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy to me is, well, it's not like it's just to me, it's to everybody. You know, Delirious and Raw made Eddie Murphy, in my opinion, the first stand-up comedian that was the equivalent to being a global rock star.
I'm smiling because I need money to go see the Eddie Murphy show.
It just happened to be comedy that made him the star. But then he parlayed that into one of the best, one of the best stretches of movie making. And because he was like the top comic, he was the top movie actor. And when you look back at Beverly Hills Cop and Coming to America, Trading Places, it goes on and on. But Raw and Delirious, with his leather suits, one red, one purple.
Yes.
And again, such an animated guy. He's so unique because he was just oozing charisma and confidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
The ladies loved him because he's a good looking, fella.
Hey now.
His laugh. No one would hear an Eddie Murphy laugh and assume it's anybody else but Eddie Murphy, because he's the only one with that distinguished, his laugh makes you laugh. He doesn't even have to say anything. He just has to laugh and you'll start laughing.
Yes, that's true.
I'm so glad though that you have him, because he's my number 1, because he's really the guy that at the age I got to see, those specials of Delirious and Raw. It's what got me hooked on stand-up comedy. I mean, he's the guy that just went, this is a whole world that's awesome. And what a cool job this dude has. He just goes in and he just kills audiences with laughter. Yeah. And a lot of his jokes, unlike a lot of the guys that, especially kind of on your list, a lot of your comedy that you seem to gravitate to are a lot of the one-liner guys, Yeah. But he was a very kind of like Bill Cosby to some degree. He was a great storyteller though. No, Eddie Murphy's jokes were stories.
They were full stories.
Loaded with jokes throughout the story.
His family. Yeah, his family, his love life, celebrities he met.
No, and I'm not trying to reference Bill Cosby, but Bill Cosby clearly was that type of a comedian where he'd sit on stage and tell stories. He almost wasn't even really telling jokes. He was telling stories. But Eddie Murphy took that to a better level, a bigger level. Added the appropriate amount of vulgarity and swearing, and it just reeled you right in. And Eddie Murphy he's the industry standard.
Absolutely. I personally think that Delirious might be about the funniest 70 minutes anybody's ever put down on tape anywhere. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, it's absolutely brilliant. And then and Delirious was an HBO special. And then 4 years later, he did Raw, which was actually in the theaters. Yeah. At the time, Raw was the highest grossing concert film of all time. There was no other. I mean, it's because it was a concert. I mean, it was him live in concert. Yeah. You think of concert as a music, but that's what it was. And that actually held that title for 20 years. It wasn't until some of these modern pop stars like Justin Bieber and these
Jonas Brothers.
Dipshits. Yeah. Well,
One Direction.
Taylor's. Some of those dipshits have unfortunately toppled his record, but I mean, he held that record for a long time. And yeah, I mean, I love Eddie Murphy. There's no question he was going to make it. When we started making this list, I wrote down Eddie Murphy, and then I'm like, oh shit, now what else? What else is there? You know, I mean, I had to whittle down about 14 comics down to the last 3. Yeah. Eddie was the obvious one.
Yep. Without a doubt.
One of my favorites. The interesting thing about Eddie Murphy versus a George Carlin or Dangerfield is that Eddie Murphy's stand-up career was actually pretty short-lived. You know, I mean, Delirious to Raw was about 4 years difference, and he really didn't do a lot of stand-up. So he earned his way onto our Mount Rushmore with that limited amount of stand-up material.
It's kind of based on 2 specials, and that's how good those were.
That's how brilliant he was.
And this might be an unpopular opinion because I feel like such a chunk of the most recent part of my life going back, you always hear people trying to, you know, is he ever going to go release another? Is he going to go back on tour? And I know he has dabbled, but leave the man alone. I actually am not, because here's the thing. You have to be realistic. He's not going to top those 2, and he knows it. No. That's why he's been laying in the weeds and focused on movies, and then became even more based in kids' movies and a younger audience. But yeah, I don't mind that he doesn't. Would I love to see him come out with something new? Yes, but I just kind of know everything he does or will do would be compared to Delirious and Raw, and that's the bar was set too high, even for himself, the guy who did it, and that's why I'm totally cool that he's fine, just doing small gigs here and there, and maybe I'm sure he does write still and probably does constantly. But I think he, in the heart of hearts, he just knows I'm not going to beat that.
No, he can't. Yeah.
But man, so here's the thing. Like we ended with, I think the king of it all, and that's Eddie. But we've talked about this so many times throughout this episode of this is the hardest one easily. And it might even be the hardest one for a while because it has so many good options to choose from. And like, I wouldn't feel right acknowledging, like, I think I'm cool sharing just a part of my short list because I'd love to hear yours that didn't make it to the top 4. We don't have to go on and drone on about them, but I at least want, the listener to know that, hey, these people were very much in the running, and that's Dave Chappelle. It is Seinfeld. It's Robin Williams. And for me, this was a hard one because he was truly on it. For a second before, I kind of weaved in and out of those last 2 positions like I talked about. But again, a very unpopular pick maybe when we're talking Mount Rushmore would be Stephen Wright for me. And again, because of the uniqueness and how dry his delivery was, there's nothing like it. So
he was great. It was great.
And I know he's not on my Mount Rushmore, but I have to, because these are the kind of jokes Stephen Wright would deliver. And it would be this simple. If a cow laughs hard, would milk come out of its nose? Like, why is the alphabet? And wait, I'm going to actually try, like, because it's his part of what makes him brilliant is his delivery.
Yeah.
And like, here's one. This is a sad impersonation of Stephen Wright. Right now, I'm having amnesia and deja vu at the same time. I think I've forgotten this before. That's, here, I think it's wrong that only one company made the game Monopoly. It's so good. And I know you and I actually saw him live.
We did.
Many years ago. He's one of those. He's that kind of comedian. That's why when you reference the one-liner stuff, Stephen Wright is very much that. So if you go see him or watch one of his stand-up stage offerings, it's awesome. You just keep getting hit with laughs. You rarely get a break.
Yeah,
because they're so quick.
It's a barrage of one-liners in that exact delivery. One of my favorites, and I don't have it in front of me, so I'll butcher this too. But it was something like. Recently I put a skylight in my apartment. My upstairs neighbor is pissed.
See, it was just
something like that.
And he never smiled.
No,
he
doesn't move around on the stage. He just stands still. And
like, here's one I remember playing too. Last night I played a blank tape at full blast. My meme neighbor went nuts.
What?
It's that kind of stuff. All right, I could go on and on with
Anyway.
Stephen Wright one-liners, but great. This was a great episode for me because it was hard. It was truly a challenge.
It was tough. It was tough. And I want to say a couple of quick ones too. Well, George Carlin was one of mine, and I'm glad you put him on yours because he would have been on mine. The other one that I had a really hard time leaving off was Richard Pryor because I absolutely love Richard Pryor. His live on the Sunset Strip special. It came about 3 or 4 years before Eddie Murphy's Delirious, and I think it sort of set the stage for that type of comedy movie. But this was a tough one. It was fun. It was fun to go through these guys. But I don't want to have to. I hope we don't do another tough one like this again.
Well, and one of the things too, and I know it kind of doesn't apply, especially to Eddie Murphy because of his movie career. But what helped me try to narrow it down was I really wanted to do my best at focusing on people who are kind of stand-up comedy first. And again, that applies to a lot of these guys. But like, for example, Robin Williams is, to me, he's just as big of a genius as anyone we've talked about. But Robin Williams was almost bigger than comedy. Like, he just could do everything. I mean, the way the speed that his brain worked at when it came to really coming up with anything. Again, we'll remind people one last time, please, give this a listen and give us your opinion, because once again, I know we say this at the end of every one of these episodes. It's called What's Your Mount Rushmore? You get to hear ours, but what's yours? That way it's a fun interaction so that we can see what people agree with, what people disagree with, where we missed, that's the fun part. And I know you've been getting like messages off the side, as have I, where, people listening, they'll send me, different opinions, their lists. But I'm like, put it on the social platforms.
Yeah, leave a comment.
Be a part of it. And we want to keep doing this because we have so many different topics. And again, some are going to be real specific and rare, and some are going to be bigger, broader ones like this one, which makes it that much harder. True. So again, check us out at What's Your Mount Rushmore. Mount is spelled out. And we're on wherever you can hear a podcast, check it out.
Yeah. Well, hit us up. Let us know. Let us know what we did right, what we did wrong.
Absolutely. And do you have did you have a sponsor for this one, or you couldn't find one after all your cold calling efforts?
No, I struck out.
Okay. Luckily, I did score one. So we'll sign off. Thank you, Donaldsons.